What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about midground and background plants and potted plants and how you deal with those and how you plant them and what you got to know, and this video is going to tell you. So right here I have 6 different plants that we have on our site. We obviously have more, but I have them separated into 2 categories. That's our rhizome plants here. Now these plants get their nutrients from the water column, not from the soil. And then we have our root feeders, which get their nutrients from the soil. And now let's talk about the differences in how you plant them. First, what are we dealing with here? We've got 2 different styles of anubias. Anubias are known for having these big, thick green leaves. They come in 3 sizes. You've got Anubias nana petite, which is even smaller than this. This is the nana. And then this is the Anubias barteri, much bigger, great for a background plant. And then we have Java fern. You've probably heard of Java fern. This is a really great plant for filling gaps, filling spaces. It looks really cool in river tanks. I'll show you that here in just a second. But the one thing that all of these have in common is they have a rhizome from which the leaves grow up and the roots grow down. You don't want to bury that rhizome because it will starve the plant, it will rot, and it will die. So we'll show you in a second in some aquariums where you can put it. But first, let's talk about rock wool. So rock wool is actually basalt fibers that have been spun, or basalt I should say, that's been spun into these little fibers, and it's great for keeping these plants healthy. It traps the moisture, but it still has breathability, and most of these plants here that you see that are not tissue cultures are going to come in rock wool. And what you want to look for in rock wool is there's always going to be a seam somewhere, right? You can see there's really not one here. Like if I tried to split right here, it's not going to happen. But if you find the seam, you're going to actually find a nice even split. So that's how you want to open this up. And when you do, in this case on the Java fern, you'll see that there's a thick area here, a little bit of a ball like this thick root here. This is where the rhizome is. It's going to be a little bit more obvious on the Anubias. So let's go take a look at that. On this Anubias barteri, same deal. I'm going to open it up. I'm just kind of peeling a little bit so I can see there's definitely not a seam here. Maybe there. Where is it? There it is. So there's one. So I get a nice clean break from the rock wool. And rock wool, you guys, is, like I said, it's basically rock just spun into fibers. It's not going to hurt your aquarium, but I don't recommend planting in your aquarium with the rock wool. Some people do. I just don't. Again, it is a rock. It's not going to hurt anything. But if you do bury this, you do run the risk of not having enough oxygen or breathability in there. That can be an issue for the plant. There's nothing wrong, however, if you're storing a plant or you're looking to just put a plant in the water for a while until you figure out what to do with it, to just even take it in the pot and just drop it in with the rock wool. There's nothing wrong with having the rock wool in your aquarium water for that time period. Now, when you have rock wool like this, you can either pull it off or you can rinse it off in just a little bit of a bowl. Here's another example of the rhizome. So the rhizome is just going to be this hard, thick area right here. We'll open this guy up. Here's an even better example. Here's a perfect example of a rhizome. So take this rock wool, and again, this washes off nice and easy in water. This thick area right here is the rhizome. Leaves are going up, roots are going down. Cool? You don't want this thick area to be buried, but you can use this thick area to glue this to structure in your aquarium. I'll show you what I mean. Come over here. So for example, this Anubias right here, now you can't see it because we use one of the techniques you can use, which is you cover up your glue spot. But what we did is we took glue, some gel super glue, and put it right along the edge of the rhizome. You obviously don't want to cake the rhizome, you don't want to cover it up, but just right along the edge here, and then stuck it to the plant, and the roots are just growing out into the water column. Again, the roots get their nutrients, or the plant gets the nutrients from the water itself versus from the substrate. Another example here are these Java ferns. We were just talking about Java ferns being part of this rhizome family. Now these Java ferns, you can probably see right here, are glued to this rock. And they're nice and healthy, they're fine, they're growing, but they're glued, oops, sorry, I'm mono shrimp, but they're glued to the rock. So gluing these to a rock, gluing them maybe to the back of a piece of wood, that's how you can get that look with these rhizome plants in your aquarium. Now the whole foreground, background, midground thing, let's talk about it. When it comes to foreground plants, yeah, they're pretty obvious. They're going to be your short, carpeted, shorter plants. But midground, background, I don't know. I think it's pretty interchangeable. I mean, at the end of the day, you probably don't want taller plants blocking shorter plants. But for the most part, if you're separating your plants around the aquarium, you're going to be fine. Like, I just probably wouldn't put this right here necessarily in the front if I wanted people to see stuff that's in the back. But that's all you need to worry about. Don't get too caught up in all the background, mid-ground stuff. So great examples of what you can do with Java ferns is fill big areas like this, these gaps, which is cool. We also have Nubius back here in the center. Now these are in some cases glued to the wood, but actually in some cases, they're also just stuffed into little cracks. Now each of these Java ferns and Anubias, they don't require CO2. They require low to medium light. They don't need necessarily high-powered light to be successful. But walk with me over here and let me show you what I'm talking about when it comes to not having to glue them. If you look right here, these Java ferns and these Anubias, right? These are actually not glued to this spider wood, but they're starting to, this Anubias nana petite, you can see how small it is. The roots are starting to come out. They'll grab onto the wood. This will stay here. The roots are coming out down here on this Anubias nana, and that's going to stay there as well. So you don't have to always glue these rhizomes to everything. That is a technique, and it's something that you can do. Just again, remember, don't cover the whole rhizome area with the glue, but sometimes you'll just find little pockets in your rock or in your wood, and that's what's cool about driftwood and rock. It has all those little pockets, and you can stuff the plants in those areas, and they'll grow and be successful there. So that's what's up with rhizomes. Now let's talk about root feeders. Okay, so when it comes to root feeders, you guys, we're talking about plants that are going to need a nutrient-rich soil, substrate, or root tabs. Let's talk about the substrate first. What I've got in here is the UNS Contra soil. So you've got a lot of plant nutrients in here, everything that the plant's going to need to be healthy. And we've got 3 different plants here that we're talking about. We've got our Amazon sword. This is a great background plant. It's beautiful. It can grow up to 20 inches. It will actually spread, so you can get a lot of mileage out of a plant like this. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze this out of the pot. And similar to what we were just talking about, or exactly the same as we were just talking about, with the rock wool, you're going to, again, look for the breaks. And you'll see you get a lot of mileage out of this guy, right? Looked like it was one plant, but check it out. It's actually going to be potentially even more than 3 or 4. Let's see here. There we go. Surprise and delight. Buy one Amazon sword, and you got 5 of these. All right, so now you could plant these in a cluster like we were just looking at. And walk with me over here real quick. I'll show you. You know, we've got, if you can picture a background situation like this, you know, especially on a white tank, you might want to create like a wall of these, or maybe you want to block a little bit of the background of the tank. An Amazon sword is what you want. You'd plant it along the back, and it would grow up and create that, you know, beautiful green wall in the background, which is really awesome for fish to pop off of. And this is the plant to do it. All right, so when you're planting this, you want to make sure that you're getting all of this underground, but you don't want to bury this area right here where the leaves are coming out, if that makes sense. So when I'm going to plant this, I don't really need any tools unless I'm trying to get into the background or into a tough spot in the aquarium. I'm just going to make sure that those roots get under there, but that this area right here where the leaves are coming out, we don't have it buried like this. Okay, so that's what you don't want to do. So when you have this planted, I'm just going to make sure that the roots get under the soil here. And again, nothing wrong with using your fingers, especially if you've got the space to do it. But I'm going to plant it so that this base where the leaves are coming out of is not buried. Okay, and you can see already in just this little nano tank how one of these guys could create a pretty awesome background for you. And if you were to plant, you know, 3 or 4, I'll just hold them in the background, you can see what this could do for your tank, right? You can see how this could create quite a cool backdrop. All right, so if you're trimming an Amazon sword, where are my scissors? There they are. If you're trimming, you're going to want to use curved scissors like this. It's going to help you get into the right spots. And you're going to want to actually cut the leaves right down here at the base, and then a new shoot is going to grow. So if this gets to be too long, you're just going to come in here and cut down here. You're not cutting the leaves off here, And that's how you can care for this in the future. And some of these tanks around here, we're in there trimming all the time and they grow back big and beautiful. All right, so that's your Amazon sword. Now let's talk about crypts. This is the crypt Wente brown. And this is part of the crypt family. Crypts come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You can see back here behind me, right here and right here, these are also crypts. We have them on either side of this driftwood. Very cool looking plants. Now, these plants do not require CO2 to be successful, and they do require good, medium light, but they don't require super high intense light. So this is a great beginner plant, just like that Amazon sword was. So this one, you can see, I'm going to need to put this in water and wash off this rock wool, but that's no big deal. But other than that, you've got these thin little roots, and the same thing applies. You're just going to want to plant it, not cover up all the way up here. Just plant the soil to right about here. And you can see that crypts, I'll just drop this in here for demonstration purposes. Crypts are really cool mid-ground plants. The crypts that I have back here behind me, these crypts have been here for probably about 8 weeks. So you can see that they're not growing up really big. They're not going to be like these huge bushes like an Amazon sword. So a really cool mid-ground. Could even be closer to the front of the glass if you wanted to. It's up to you. And then lastly, we have this plant here, which the friendly name is called moneywort. All right, that's the easier one to pronounce than all the Latin stuff that I'm sure you guys see. Now, this is also a very cool, easy beginner plant. This also doesn't require super intense light. It doesn't require CO2. But when you receive it, you'll notice one thing that's different than all the other plants, and that is it doesn't come in this little cup with this rock wool. It actually comes with this little metal tag right here. And this is a really flexible little plant weight. And the reason is that if you were to loosen this up, what you would find, I can pull one out, is the plant actually just looks like this. This, as you can imagine, would probably be pretty hard to plant. So it comes in a setup like this. I can even put that right back. It comes in a setup like this where you can see that the plants and the little roots are back there or coming out of the bottom, but this allows them to all stay together. Now, I personally pull this off and then plant them in a clump. Some people like to keep this on. I think there's a little bit of a debate out there. Let me know in the comments what you guys think as to whether or not this should or should not stay. Let people who don't know also know your thoughts. Welcome those comments. But you can put it in here, and then obviously once you have water, it's going to stand up like this, and it's going to be a real nice green plant, a little bit of a different texture and shape than some of the other plants that we have in here already. Okay, so here I just want to make the point that if you wanted to plant one of these plants in a gravel or really even a sand, but probably better a gravel, but just not a nutrient-rich substrate, you would want to use a root tab. Okay, so when you put them in a situation like this, where you can see it's mostly sand and gravel, this isn't a nutrient-rich substance, which is why we don't actually have anything planted in here. This Monte Carlo is growing off of the wood, the Java fern is growing off of the rhizome, off of the rock, the Anubias, same thing. We don't have anything growing out of the soil, right? But if we wanted to, we would put it in here and we would just add a root tab. Root tabs are little clusters of nutrients that go in the soil right next to the roots, and they will feed the plant what it needs, and they expire about every 6 weeks. So you're gonna want to stay on that and keep adding root tabs, but that's how you plant plants like we were just talking about in substrate like this. So ultimately, once you get these in your aquarium, they grow big and green and lush, and they fill out your aquarium like this. Then you get to take your tools and come in there and cut, trim, and create your own piece of art. And that's what we love about aquascaping.